Good evening, everyone. We're here for the October 10th, 2022 Wauwatosa School Board meeting. We are at 12121 West North Avenue in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. We will begin with a roll call.
Ms. Bienfeld?
Here.
Ms. Fraley?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here.
Dr. Jessup Anger?
Here.
Mr. Phillips? Here.
Ms. Willis and Dr. Hoyt are both excused absences this evening. We will begin with public comment on non-agenda items. Members of the Wauwatosa School Board value the input of students, parents, staff members, and community members. The board's regularly scheduled meetings provide an opportunity for opinions and concerns to be expressed publicly. The board values all comments and will respectfully consider decision-making. The board requests that individuals limit their comment on each item to 3 minutes. Following any comment, an individual board member may respond on the issue raised. However, it is not the intent of the public comment portion of the agenda for the board to enter into a debate with a member or members of the community. Because non-agenda items are not publicly posted in advance, no action will be taken on public comment regarding non-agenda items this evening. Is there any items this evening for non-agenda items for public comment? Seeing none in the room, Jamie, is there any online?
There are no hands raised online.
Thank you. We will move into a special recognition. Mr. Colvin is the recipient of the Brewers Grand Slam Teacher of the Month Award. He was nominated by former Wauwatosa East students and is a Latin teacher within the district Wauwatosa School District. Dr. Means, any other kind of framing this?
Well, despite Mr. Copeland's award, he did not bring a playoff run to Milwaukee, but he did have an opportunity to throw out first pitch at a game month, and I think it speaks volumes to the breadth and depth of the programming that we offer here. That our Latin program had made such an impact that a former student nominated Nathan for Grand Slam Teacher of the Month. We're very proud of him. He got the ball across the plate, which is, he didn't do a 50 Cent or Roseanne Barr or anything else. He did a great job, but more importantly, making a great impact on kids in their lives. And I'm also proud of the fact that we offer so many different languages. I think this is an opportunity for Nathan to just talk about the great program he has and other opportunities that we do to offer young people in our world languages. So, Nathan, congratulations on being recognized as teacher. Sure, okay.
Can I stand here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
I think Latin is the most important thing anyone could ever study. And if you want to live a good life, you have to study Latin. Yeah, what else should I say?
I think you said it all. And I'm so disappointed. I think the board and some of the community members who have followed our board meetings, we know that Ms. Jenny Fox, she has worked in our district office for a while as a former Latin teacher, and I'm so sorry she's not here to applaud and say bravo, and you're absolutely right. So, Nathan, again, thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thanks.
Nathan, may I endorse everything you just said?
Thank you. Yes,
and
may.
Encourage all the students in the district who can possibly have access to Latin. Please do. It is a Latin thing, of course, but it's also a Wauwatosa thing. It's kind of a tradition that students that will take Latin and perhaps wonder why, but they'll be glad later. Is that I'm trying to make that a positive statement. I'm an attorney.
Yeah, they'll all be gone later. That's sure.
Yeah, and
They should be glad now too.
yes, they should. But maybe you know what? Maybe I should sit in on your class because I never had Latin. Actually, I'm very serious about that. So, please, all the students who can possibly take your class, please take it. It will be quite an enrichment experience, and it is an example of things we try to do for students. That's more than like a mathematical count of, well, what's the enrollment? So will we staff the teacher? No, we think that the young people should have this available to them. So we're going to, just speaking for me, we're going to continue to offer this. And thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on our agenda is one of my more enjoyable points of the year is our appointment of our student school board members. A big thank you to Jessica and Jenny, who served along with Mr. Pinion on the selection team. Really excited to have you joining us. Each year we have students from East and West spend much of the academic year with the school board. And this is something I think we've been doing for about this might be the 5th year. And so students have provided a lot of good input, a lot of incisive questions, thoughtful perspectives, and have sought ways to bring student voice, both theirs and those of their classmates and peers, into the boardroom. I think that's really important. So without further ado, Ms. Neufeld, if you can read this item.
Yes, thank you. It is recommended that the school board approve the appointment of Margaret Daisy Lehman, Dylan Nolte, and Zachary Nowacek as student representatives to the school board, and I so move.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any board discussion on this item?
I'll just say this is one of my favorite times of the year where everyone is happy because we get to have great kids, young adults, almost real adults up here with us. And I am most serious when I say this is one of the things I am most proud of that I've been a part of on the school board. And seeing as though I've gotten letters from some of you in the past about subjects that have come before the board, I'm even more excited to have you sitting up here with us and pushing us and asking good questions, everything that Dr. Jessica said. So thank you for going through the process. We know you have a lot of things going on, and we're just really excited for you.
Any community comments? Anything that parents or family members might want to say that pictures of childhood and this is a unique parental opportunity. Please.
Dylan is a student of Mr. Copeland for the last 4 years, and it has made a very big
Dr. Means, please call them.
Sure. Ms. Neufeld,
Yes.
Ms. Braylon,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes. Congratulations, new students, school board members. Okay. You will be sworn in at a future school board meeting where our clerk is in attendance. I'm not sure who is planning on sitting in on the meeting today. All 3 of you are welcome to stay, but 2 of you are welcome to come on up and grab seats. And frankly, if all 3 of you want to come up, we've got some extra seats if they're all seats. If at any point, as we go throughout the evening, we will have an onboarding conversation that we'll set up where we'll kind of walk through and help explain things and learn the information. The first night's kind of weird. I think all board members who, I remember I got selected and seated and I was like, something up there, and I was like, wait, now? So if you've got any questions as we go or want clarifications or you're just not sure exactly what's happening, feel free to stop. It means somebody who's probably in the audience confused too, and it would help us to slow down and make sure all the questions are answered so you have a good sense you can. But thank you all for being here this evening. Next up on our agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items in the consent agenda which board members would like to remove for separate discussion and action? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. Any board discussion? Any community comment or discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, Dr. Needs, please call roll.
Ms. Moonville,
Yes.
Ms. Braylon,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Jess Mayer,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Abstain. And that agenda passes. Next up is under strategic goal number 1, academic performance. We will have a report on 2022 summer school report to the board.
It's my pleasure to have Mr. Oliver come on up. And Mr. Oliver stepped into a very large leadership role under the direction of Dr. Nicole Marvel to lead our summer school program this year. We are feel that we're hands with Mr. Oliver. He's going to provide you with, I believe, a very comprehensive overview of how our summer school program went this year, but more importantly, now that he'll have a year of planning ahead of him. What are some of the opportunities ahead of us and chances to really make our program even more robust? Oliver, thank you for being here this evening. Dr. Marvel is always ain't stretching anymore. You'll have to work with the team now.
Appreciate it. We're all good. Thank you. So Dr. Means, thank you so much for the introduction. Again, Mr. Steve Oliver, our current sitting summer school principal, is here this evening to present all of you just with an update on the report for summer school of 2022, and also foreshadow some of the work that he will be engaging in between now and in preparation for this next summer school of 2023. So Mr. Oliver, I'll kick it over to you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So this is the report we put together. A little bit of a summary of just what went on this past summer. In general, our summer school ran from June 20th, which is usually a week after school ends, and ran till Friday, June 29th. It was a total of 6 weeks. We did have beginning band blast off, and we sang that occurred from August 1st to August 5th at Longfellow and East High School. Our summer school locations, again, were the same. We had elementary at Eisenhower and Lincoln, and then some of the enrichment programs were actually at West and at East. And then also we had some of our credit courses at Whitman Middle School, as well as Longfellow Middle School. So one of the things that we looked at was Dr. Marvel had asked me to kind of look at the numbers. Where have we been? Where are we headed? And we went back to 2019. You can kind of see our enrollments, and we also wanted to take that in consideration. One of the areas of was a need, and that was our teaching staff and just being able to find staff for this past summer. So you can see the numbers there, and from 2019 all the way up to this year. And the numbers drop off a little bit, but significantly was the number of teachers compared to last summer, 123 to 100. So, that's one of the areas that we discussed, and that was a challenge in respect to staffing this past summer.
I just want to add that the asterisk there for summer 2022 just indicates that not all 100 teachers signed up and completed the full 6 weeks at the elementary and middle school level.
Right. And this would be the staffing for the 9-12. Again, you can see the numbers. We actually, from the summer of 2019, servicing 881 students with 67 teachers, and compare that to the summer of 2022, 937 students and only 47. There's a huge gap there. And that led to us being kind of creative with what we came up with some of our programming to encourage staff, created some hybrid models that was used throughout the programming, mostly in our English, as well as some of our gym classes, where they were only meeting twice, and then 3 days were hybrid. So that was one of the ways that we were able to attract some teachers and bring them in and still provide the services. As I mentioned there, we got a little bit creative with hybrid high school credit courses. Did that in respect to gym, that was foundations as well as general PE. We also did that with some of our English classes. Another aspect was special education staffing provided assistance at all levels. At times there was, we saw some gaps, and special ed leadership was able to, provide the services that we needed across the board. I think one of the things that was great this past summer is in respect to the K2 experience classes, we looked at those, we tried to revamp those, and with the assistance of Liza Weber and Caroline Curley, we now have uniform curriculum for those K2 experience classes throughout the district. So I was really happy with that, and that was pretty successful with our programming. Our classes, very popular, received a lot of positive feedback. Ceramics, always a favorite. Paper mache, art exploration, recycled art, probably an area we could grow. In respect to weaknesses, as I mentioned before, staffing shortages. That was a challenge from day one and up until the last day before we started. We juggled. We came up with some options to fill areas of need, and others, we turned away. And just for example, there was about 46 students that we were not able to provide service between geometry and English classes. So, that would be an area of need. Oral comm, which initially looked like it was going to be about 27 students, give or take. We were able to reduce that to about only 5 students that didn't take oral comm. So, and health was another class, but we were able to find, I was able to hire someone within the last week. And so we were able to cover that. But again, that was probably the biggest area of need was staffing. Misalignment of some of the courses to supportive instructional spaces. That's just simply when we offered some of our art classes, some of the facilities did not provide what was necessary to carry out the projects. An example would be ceramics. So we just have to make sure that when we are providing these services, that we have the proper instructional spaces for the students. So they're not being carried across 76th Street in a box by, a teacher who, is not moving very quickly as traffic goes very fast over 76th Street. So balancing school enrollments between the two sides, Eisenhower and Lincoln. Our enrollments are very different between the two facilities. Some of that coming by family desire to be in a certain location, but we need to do a better job of balancing that between Eisenhower and Lincoln. So opportunities, technology education department has proposed some new offerings. I've reached out to members as Steve Swanson, Phil Kiley, Mr. Griffey about what could we do? We have these wonderful educational spaces. Is there a possibility that we could run some type of programming, some type of enrichment programs for, for our students? And they've come back with some neat ideas. So, that's something that we're looking to grow, is using that space and develop some enrichment programs or possibly even some credit classes. And I'm also in discussion with the rec department. I think one of the things, so I've been doing summer school this is my 13th year. But stepping into this leadership role, just understanding just the scope of how many different individuals are involved. And the rec department is a huge asset to our community, and just understanding the services they provide, that we're not in conflict with each other. And so, we talked about just exactly what could be some programming maybe with rec, with our FIAD, with enrichment classes. So that's another area of growth. So, as I stated earlier, possibilities of continued staffing shortages is something that is a concern in respect to, getting to the end of the year. And I'd say the last 2 years, there's been some challenges in, providing staffing. We do much better when we have in-district people who know what we do, understand our systems, our grading. And so the more I can keep in-district people on staff, the better our students and I think our programs are. We do bring in wonderful people from outside the district. They do a nice job, but again, our students benefit from having in-district people. So that would be an area that, through human resources, we can hopefully, develop and grow. So what are we doing? We're going to develop a survey to solicit feedback on scheduling and course offerings from district families and staff. In fact, that's in progress right now and should be going out sometime this month. The first thing will be on scheduling, and the second will be on on course offerings. So scheduling shall be coming soon, and then course offerings, just kind of getting feedback on what people are looking for. Some of our programs have been there for over, I'd say, 15 years. So, what's interest to, families and students. And then assessing and determining the usefulness of hybrid classes. It's summer. I think it provides us with an opportunity, learning about just exactly the credited hours. It's 8,100 minutes for one credit. So for summer, it's 4,050 minutes that is required. And, can we do that? Maintain the rigor that, we expect with our credit classes. So we're looking at some hybrid options and whether that helps retain staff as well. So right here, you can see our action steps and our timeline. As I stated, the student and family surveys is going to be happening in October. I'll be reaching out to staff earlier. I did that back in February to kind of give you a little bit perspective of being a little bit behind the ball this past year. So I hope to have that survey out by November, and exploration of other course offerings in November as well. Develop course and offerings by December so we can have that into our literature for scheduling, which takes place in January of 2023. Hope to be on top of staffing and for that in January and throughout May, trying to find out what we need. And high school summer school registration would take place in 2023 of January, and the K would be in March of 2023. An area of growth, but I was really happy to see that we were actually under budget for the first time. So, that was with the help from the business department with Cindy and Holly. They really helped me out and provided me with a lot of guidance on that. So, I guess one thing, looking back to Mr. Colpine, Latin, yes, it is important. We could definitely grow it in summer school. And maybe that's an area that we have an enrichment program. So, and that goes for any of the foreign languages as well. So, I think I'm at, thank you. So, questions?
Students, this is an opportunity for you to jump in and ask questions as well. So if you've got them, if you've experienced our school, feel free to step in and share thoughts. Anyone you want to start?
So I appreciate you being very explicit multiple times about that and what it is. That was not just us this summer, that was everywhere. But what it has me thinking about is how creative the new finance team is with Mr. Brightman in terms of us being able to project and whatnot. And it makes me wonder about, are there ways that we can offer incentives for teachers who sign up by this date to get an X bonus for committing to summer school that would allow us to plan better, or teachers who have never done summer school before, they get a special something, etc. The success of the program, I feel like, is always grounded in the day-to-day experiences between teachers and students. And so I just want to make sure that we are trying to get the folks in front of kids that we want, and not through begging and pleading, but making it worth their while, because I think we'll make them feel like we're treating them like professionals, et cetera. So is there possibly the opportunity for us to think about a different kind of incentive schedule for signing up earlier so that we can plan a little bit better?
So one of the things that was provided to staff, in-district staff that taught 2 accredited classes was a $500 bonus. So that was something that was provided last year and the year before to staff. It was limited this year to 4 credit classes. I would also note, and was with your recommendation, that we increased our fee overall back in April. It was in May, to meet that need. That was one area that, as I had looked at other districts to see what the competition was doing, and we increased it up to $30 an hour, and so that did actually help out in some cases. So I think between human resources, that's going to be a conversation: is what can we do to retain staff, and what type of incentives we can provide. So that's, great idea.
Yeah, and I'd love for you to go to them saying, here are things I'd love for you to consider, maybe what you see other districts doing, both Wisconsin and around the country, because this is going to be an issue moving forward. My second question was specific to numbers. So we have numbers of kids here. I'm curious, is there a way, and it doesn't have to be tonight or anything, I would love for us to be able to see a breakdown of kids who are doing enrichment versus, actually building on their reading, their writing, et cetera. So there's credit hours, but then there's still the English and whatnot in the lower levels. I think one of the things I'm always thinking about is, as we talk about student learning and test scores and whatnot, learning loss is real in the summer, learning loss was real during COVID. How do we actually leverage and maximize summer months where we can give parents the opportunity at the lower levels, and in the middle school levels, for kids to actually focus on, they don't have to do, all of their sessions, but if you're doing recycled art, which my kids did, they're also doing something on novels, they're doing something on writing, et cetera, so that it's sort of not all fun, but some fun with reading.
A lot of times when families sign up, they ask for advice, and the benefit of having the staff that I had, they kind of encourage families, so there's usually a rec class, some type of FIAD, an art class, and then some type of either math or ELA class. So those are still, kind of our go-to classes that we have. There have been families that have come in and had, strictly very academic schedules. And I've communicated, maybe encouraged them to, it is summer, and, it might be good to have some other type of enrichment class for the child as well. So, but definitely I can look at those numbers.
Yeah, I don't want to back us into the corner, but I'd love, even in the, the end of the second quarter, I guess, for elementary school kids, when teachers are meeting with parents to say hey, don't forget about summer school. That would be a great opportunity, for their kid to work on X or Y. And then my other just comment is I love that you're talking about tech and, opportunities for kids. I hear from a lot of the high school kids. They love computer science. They love coding. They love, things that are, things that could be getting them ready for college, maybe that they don't have time to fit into their schedule in high school because they're feeling pressure for the APs or whatever it is. So very skills based. So learning code, learning, video production on their computers, things like that. So that's exciting to hear. Thank you.
My only was going to ask, like, I was really asking about, is the staff survey going on in November going to have like some of those options? Just that, like, we can do childcare. Would you prefer virtual? Like, how do we understand like what would help that engagement?
Two or three questions. First, are we charging any fees to students to participate in summer school?
Not in district, no.
That's really good. 18 years ago, when Mr. Hufeld and I started on the board, the district charged fees, administrative fees, to participate in summer school. And I came to believe it discouraged enrollment, and it turned out that the cost to administer the fees used up all of the fee money. Really, truly. So good to hear we're not charging fees. And if we hit budget problems, please don't consider charging fees because it's counterproductive. Second, way back then, 18 years ago, for example, we were not able to offer summer band at that time because if the regular school year band teachers didn't want to teach it in the summer, and they didn't, we wouldn't offer it at all. Do we have any situations like that where we will only offer the class in the summer if our regular teachers from the regular fall and spring school year are willing to teach it? Or do we go out and find other teachers? Maybe those teachers can get their start in the school district then, get to know us and what it's like to teach here.
We've gone out and hired staff. Yeah, we have gone out and hired staff for those positions. So,
in fact, I met one in the lobby when I was waiting for a meeting one day. So I knew that, but sometimes I ask questions so the community can hear the answer as well, to know the kinds of things we're doing. Yes, okay.
Yeah, so, and I think also, this year, as a parent going through the district and having my child go through the Getting Band Blast off, but just to see that program, that 1 week, first of all, the staff does most of the planning. I just really have to exist in that space and help out where need be. They do an amazing job. I think that just bodes really well for, our arts program with our music. It's really amazing at that, like the beginning of the week, it's a little hard to hear. But by the end of the week, those kids have come together for Let's Go Band. So I think that's a tremendous program that we have for the summer school. And then also, I think they offer some interesting things for kids like during the summer, like jazz band. And that gets kids to kind of think about, how music can change into different varieties. And I'd like to see that program grow a little bit more with our numbers.
Okay. So, and my last question, and I'm going to need Mr. Brighton's help on this. So we'll go. Years ago, the summer school attendee, actually, even if the student was a regular student during the school year, that summer school attendee had an additional enrollment count. What is that currently this year?
Yeah, I'll let you highlight that through my presentation.
Okay. Well, we won't steal your glory here, but just to say that it's still true that summer school reduces the local tax burden. Is that still the case? Because is that
there is some need associated, but the primary benefit is in the revenue limit itself with the revenue authority because we have summer school.
Okay. So it's in a general sense, it specifically helps our finances that we have summer school. So anything we can do to promote summer school, we're not all about the money, but we have to watch the money and be aware of the money. Your program in the summer school helps school and district finances and helps the Wauwatosa taxpayers. So there's an added plus to it that means you don't, you're not a drag on the district. You're not a financial burden on the district. You're actually helping the district with as many kids as we can get into summer school. So from the hat of just having the money in the bank account to write the checks for the other things we want to do, summer school is a very productive thing for us. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
I don't know how to use the mic. Do I just press it?
Yep, there you go.
So I attended the Montessori school here, and it's a very small school, but I wanted to know in what ways is summer school being promoted for those students as well? Especially for like the arts classes for like elementary school kids, because to Mr. Meyer's point as well, like if we can promote it for them as well, like what benefit that might have some benefit. So is it being promoted to them as well so that they have the same opportunities?
I would say like programming run in that style is something that we do have more project-based learning, I think, in our 15 minutes sessions, but to say that it's taking from the Montessori model is something that we don't have at this point. But, many of the classes, I was looking at, taking a project and, expanding it over, many class periods. So it's a lot of project-based learning.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
Are you asking whether or not Montessori students are being and their families are being informed that summer school is an option? Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
yes. Okay. Yes. Yes, they are. And we actually have quite a few members of the Montessori staff that work summer school. So you're welcome.
One of the things I found when I moved to Wauwatosa, and I don't know, my kids are at Roosevelt, so there's a culture at Roosevelt that families just do summer school. And my hunch is that that's probably not consistent across all the elementary schools. And so I think one of the things I often think about is how beneficial that is as a parent to say, okay, here's the 6 weeks that we've got, summer school to 3 weeks, whatever you're negotiating with your child. And then you've got the wraparound care of the summer adventure club and things there. And I know that is often the anxiety parents have of like, okay, I've got the morning covered, but what about the afternoon? So I think anything we can do to be able to kind of coordinate, communicate with parents to allay that anxiety that is emanating across Wauwatosa of the day summer adventure club opens, am I going to get a spot? To make sure that folks know how to do that, that we can meet that need wherever we can. And I know it's not a summer school issue, but in parents' minds, they're one and the same. And I'm wondering if we can figure out the puzzle of having teacher capacity, particularly at the elementary levels. What things that we can do to help instill a culture of summer school is a great time, both for encouragement, for ongoing learning, for building connections with future classmates in middle school, if you're at the elementary school level or so on, of how we can do that, and kind of ambassadorships and so on. Because my sense is that different elementary schools have different cultures around do kids participate. And that I know was really, beneficial and neat for us to be able to participate in that. Speaking of languages, I think a second grader at the time who took German, Spanish, ASL, SR3 summer school. Like she was all in on all languages. So I think the program is a gem. I'm really excited that we're doing it. I think the challenge is I would love to see it grow. And I know in this moment we may have a hard time growing because of staff capacity to carry through on all the courses. But please let us know what we can do to continue to support the program. Thanks for everyone.
Yeah, I was just going to mention we work hand in hand with the rec department, especially when they do their summer adventure club sign up. And so that's one area that we now have identified and I think that leads to a little bit of the imbalance that occurs between the east side and west side. And so Jenny Cottom, who works over at the rec department, we've kind of seen that that's got to be something that we do kind of in coordination. So that's one area that, we're definitely working on. And again, we're trying to grow our programs and find out just exactly what kids and families are interested in. Been doing this for 13 years. I think summer school is a huge asset to our community, and it's just it's fun. I enjoy it. So thanks.
Hey, before you all take off, I'm going to see if there's any community comment on the side. Okay. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Hey, wait a minute, I want to say something. I don't even like.
Sir, you've got to come on up to the mic and share your name and your address, and it's only on this content of summer school.
Oh, no, you guys can hear what I got to say.
We've got it open. If you'd like, we have it at the beginning of the.
No, I work in Illinois.
Sir, I'm sorry. There was an opening session that I think we're here for to close for any non-agenda item.
Does anybody have any disagreement with me saying what I got to say? No?
Sir, you cannot speak right now.
Wait, you can call the police. I paid.
Sir, you cannot speak right now.
I paid $60,000 in property taxes, and I want to say something. And then
Sir, there will be an opportunity. There was at the beginning of the meeting, and there will be again at the close of the meeting for you to have a non-agenda comment.
I thought that are we closing?
We are not.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'll wait.
Thank you.
I thought you guys were closing for the meeting.
Let's start discussion on summer school.
Thank you.
So waiting for my intro, Dr. Means.
Yes. The next item is number 6 under strategic goal 6 operations. The first item is the 2021-2022 fiscal year end report. Dr. Means.
Our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Pete Bregman, has done a really good job in looking at our finances as we wrapped up 21-22 fiscal year. And he is able to now give us an overview of how we ended the year. I think this is also the precursor to what will happen next month, where the board will be asked to certify the tax levy. We'll give more information about the mill rate and so on. But we felt that this would be really good information for you to receive as it pertains to our financial health and how we've been managing funds over the last 12 months.
Okay, well, thank you. And tonight, as Dr. Bean said, we're looking at the 2021-22 fiscal year end. So kind of backwards a little bit in your head to where our future budget planning has been as of late. As I start out most budget presentations to you, as I will with this one, we'll take a look at the budget calendar and where this fits in the process. Again, we're wrapping up the we're just entering into the 22-23 budget, or finishing up that process with the third Friday count. And so showing how that fits. But with that, we typically in my past would have an annual meeting and budget hearing where we report out on fiscal year ends. We don't have that here. So I saw that as a gap and wanted to give an update at how we finished out the last fiscal year before we lead into the board approving a budget at the next meeting, where you'll see these financials laid out and have questions then potentially. So hopefully going through that aspect of it now.
Mr. Brightman, before you go on, that's it was mentioned at the board table earlier this evening. Sometimes we ask questions and we know the answers, but it's good for the community. You mentioned something. You mentioned an annual meeting. What is that? Number one. Number two, why don't we have an annual meeting in Wauwatosa? And how does what you're going to present in the next few minutes correspond with what most other school districts in the state of Wisconsin receive in terms of financial?
Sure. It simply goes by a definition of how the district is organized. And I don't know the history about why Wauwatosa is one of the few K-12 districts that's organized as a union district versus a common school district. So common school districts are required to have a budget hearing and annual meeting prior to the October budget adoptions that will happen at the next board meeting. The statutory structure of this district is that it's not required, but yet we do keep the board and community informed through items like this. So we're not bypassing that type of transparency. There's also an opportunity at an annual meeting for the electorate to be in attendance and vote on a tax levy to support the district operations. That is not required in Wauwatosa. And the interesting aspect to that is prior to 1993, when revenue limits went into place, that electorate approval of the tax levy was much more important than it is now. It's really advisory now, and the statutes were changed so the board has the authority and the responsibility to approve a tax levy regardless of where the annual meeting goes in a common school district. Again, we don't have that structure here, but that's an interesting update based on the 1993 restructuring of how school districts are funded through the revenue caps.
If I can just add one thing for the student school board members, everything that you just heard is as complicated as it sounds. And when we do the legislative advocacy update a little bit later, I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we're doing to make sure the public, you all, everybody understand how that money works its way through the system. So if you're feeling confused, you're in the perfect place. It'll come.
And my advice to you, and same thing to legislators when I talk to them, especially freshman legislators that are getting to know school finance, is just understand that a lot of this is counterintuitive, and that's the way that it is. It's the way the statutes were written, and so it's just the way that it is. We'll explain it as clearly as we can, but be okay with it being counterintuitive at times. And same thing with enrollments. We'll talk about summer school enrollments, how they factor in. It just doesn't make sense logically when you look at it up front, but it does when you kind of pace through how it all fits together. So when we look at the recap for last year's financials, we like to look at kind of the big buckets of where we ended the year and why did we end in a surplus position, especially a significant surplus position that Wauwatosa did. And so really three main categories. We had unanticipated revenues. We talked about those at length in the spring and with the June budget approvals. There were three areas of federal funding. The governor had some discretionary COVID relief funds that were sent to the district last December that were unbudgeted and able to be used for this current year's budget. There was some E-rate funding that was received by the district that wasn't budgeted or planned on, so additional E-rate. And then there was some FEMA reimbursements that was given to the district. So those resources weren't spent last year, are part of this year-end recap that I'm going through with the numbers and are being used this year to help balance the budget. We then had expenditures managed under budget due to cost controls, due to conservative budget planning in the prior cycle going in. As you all know, the state did not fund any additional resources to schools in the current biennium. So this district, along with just about every district, went into this budget cycle very conservatively. Fortunately, we didn't plan on using COVID relief funds to help balance out the inflationary increases on our budget, which many districts did. So we don't have that budget cliff facing us. But nevertheless, we did enter it with a conservative mindset. We did make some decisions last year with teacher compensation and some other areas that will use up some of this budget capacity that we'll look at, but that was intentional, knowing that it was there and being able to utilize it for this current school year. So none of this was unintentional or a surprise to the system. As we look forward, and as I understand it, and was a part of the board hearing process and discussion process this last spring. When you look at the financials as a whole, this is our general fund where the operations of the district, the majority of the operations reside. And as you look at total revenues, came in over what we had budgeted. Again, about 2.27 million of that was over budget. 1.7 of it was due to those federal revenues that were received. So most of it was attributable to that. On the expenditure side, we came in about $3.5 million under what was budgeted. And I put together a slide on the next slide to show exactly what makes up the key differences or key variances within that, because that is a pretty large number. But as you kind of tick through the expenditure line items, you can see teacher salaries being the first one there. We had about a $338,000 variance, but that's 99% approximately of what we had budgeted to actual. So that's a sound budgeting cycle with that one. Some of the other ones came in lower, but the substitute salaries, for example, there was less draw on substitutes last year, so that was a good thing on the budget. And we recoded some of those costs to a purchase service. We don't have all of our own district employees as subs. We're renting them through a third party, to lack of a better way to put that. So they're a purchase service rather than being a payroll expense. And then the other line items, again, are pretty well within what you would expect to have within a budget magnitude. The supply line did surprise me, and that one I haven't dug into yet, but to really understand why we left so much in the supply areas unspent within the system. We then have our operating transfer to Fund 27. We talked a lot about this in our last legislative advocacy committee about how the interaction of state aid or state special education aid factors into our general fund. This is how it works. Our transfer of local cost to Fund 27 is net federal and state reimbursements we get for Fund 27. So this general fund transfer is what is that local portion, and that came in under what we budgeted, which is a conservative budgeting method that many districts use. And then other expenditure line items, if you take everything else into the mix, there's about $100,000 of overage, but a lot of over and unders if you look at those different areas of what makes that up. So overall expenditures are over 95%, 95.9% of budget to actual. So again, not out of the range of what's would be considered extreme by any means, but did leave us with a positive position. As I mentioned earlier, we did intentionally do some things within the budget for this current year, knowing that we had this surplus ready for us to be able to use to leverage there. And then the expenditures are again charted out at the bottom of that page. I was going to pause here and see if there are any questions up to this point. Okay. Then put in a fund balance slide, and as you would expect, if we end the year with a budget surplus, it would add to our fund balance. And just caution the board that because we utilized a lot of those funds in the current year budget, this is a one-time kind of increase to the fund balance. That'll come back down as we use some of those resources in the current year budget, which was intentional as we planned into that. And then for all the other funds, Fund 27 is a special education fund. It's a self-balancing fund. So any discrepancy between those other revenues, the federal and state revenues that I mentioned, is the local transfer. It always balances out to zero with that. The debt service fund, we had revenue come in on the tax levy and zero on expenditures. And that's the creative accounting that we use to optimize state aid for Wauwatosa School District by having every other year expenditure on debt service to help reduce our shared costs and bring us back up into getting all the state aid that we can get through the formulas. So we do that every other year. So you'll see that offset. Capital projects, Fund 41, we had revenues come in off the tax levy of $540,000. We spent $1.5 million on projects, and there's a fund balance to be able to do that from on an annual basis. The 2019 referendum, Fund 49, we had $14.5 million in expenditures. $300,000 you see in revenues is from interest earnings that we receive on money that isn't yet spent. And that would be the difference that you see there. For the food service Fund 50, if you recall, last year we had federal reimbursements for all lunches and breakfasts were federal reimbursements by the federal government. And so we had higher participation and we had higher reimbursements on a per meal basis from the federal government. So we did achieve about $1 million surplus in Fund 50, which is not typical, but will be helpful as we plan into future kitchen updates and upgrades of equipment and looking to enhance our program. Those resources will come in handy for that purpose. And then the Community Services Fund ended pretty much on balance with a small surplus of $35,000. So that incorporates the rest of the system into the budget actual picture. And so that is what I had for the first agenda item on the year-end recap.
On the fund budget variances, operating transfer to Fund 27, can you explain that again? So we budgeted the $8 million. We only spent $7 million. Any of that is state money, or is that all our money going to cover what the state has not provided?
Yep. So I'll reference back to this slide, which is the Special Education Fund showing both revenues and expenditures of $13.7 million. That is the total budget for Fund 27. Once you take away or you reimburse the district for those federal reimbursements and the state aid that we get, which is about 30% of the prior year costs, the net effect of that and the local portion of our Fund 27 is the $7.3 million that we had on actual costs of to 13.7. So about just over half of the costs are local costs within the district.
And those are costs that by law we have to spend in order to meet IDEA and federal and state requirements for special education.
That is correct. These costs are driven by individual student education plans, IEPs. And so, yes.
So the state reimburses us for 30% of that.
Of aidable costs, which are stripped from the federal reimbursements that we get for 100% reimbursement on other costs. So that's why it doesn't net to exactly that number.
So just to highlight, there's always the fund balance number, and people look at the big fund balance number and say, well, why aren't we doing more of this and more of that? And then I always try to say the true fund balance is the balance at the end of the calendar year before we receive our revenues. Is that right? We don't want that to run below zero.
Correct. And that's a future presentation that I'm starting to put together for the board, is to show that the June 30 fund balance is an audited number that we get as part of our financial statements. It's a point in time at the end of our fiscal year, but fund balance does fluctuate throughout the year, as you pointed out. And our fund balance gets much closer to the 0 point as we get into the months of November, December, early January, when we get but most of our tax receipts on January 18th or so. Brings us back to a cash flush position, but yes.
And what a lot of school districts do, which we do not do, is that they run that number negative at the end of the year. They have to borrow and pay it back sometime during the following year. But then they borrow the next year, because once it's like a credit card bill, once you go negative, right? Now to pay it off, you have to actually make more money the next period to cover current expenses and pay it off. Now, why do I say all this? We know interest rates are going up. And anybody who looked at a car loan recently or a mortgage loan, you see what that does to your monthly payments. And through tremendously good fiscal discipline, budgetary discipline over the past, way before my time on the board, we have not short-term borrowed in the school district, because we always be sure that number is bigger than zero on December 31st or whatever the exact date is. So I commend the community and you for continuing that strong fiscal discipline, spending discipline on how we operate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we can move on to our next report. Thank you, Mr. Brennan.
Okay, and the second report is on our third Friday membership count update. And I'll just say, I think I missed the mark a little bit on this topic and talking to Dr. Means and what he was expecting. And we will circle back on the overall enrollment picture and how Third Friday feeds our budget projections as we plan into future budget cycles and things. I guess my intent for this item was to focus on what the board will be adopting and approving at the next meeting as far as a budget, and then the tax levy to support that budget. So how the Third Friday count factors into that with my main intent. But we do have some slides too that will kind of at a high level show the impact on overall enrollments and how that fits into the picture also. With that. So those were added today. So I apologize for the late minute add on those. Just a quick reminder to the board and community is there are two main counts that all school districts in the state have. The first one is the third Friday in September, and that's the same thing every year. The second one is the second Friday in January. And the third Friday in September is the first official count, but it's also the one that drives the revenue authority for the district. The second Friday count factors into aid allocations, not the revenue limit. So in my mind, from a budget management standpoint, this third Friday count is the critical one that we utilize, obviously, for our revenue purposes. And again, it gets updated as our revenue authority for this current school year budget. Another one of the counterintuitive aspects of school finance in Wisconsin is we're more than a quarter of the way through our fiscal year, and we're really setting our original budget 2 weeks from now, which is just not normal in most states. They would set their budget 6 months in advance of the current impending school year. So this is another thing we need to talk to legislators about with the timing on some of these different things. You mentioned also, Mr. Meyer, some of the timing of state aid and some of those payments come later in the year, which forces many more districts to cash flow borrow than need to. Fortunately, we don't have to do that with the way that we look at things. So two different ways to look at it. Enrollment is the number of students in desks. So that's straightforward, easy to get our heads around. The more complicated one is membership. So we take the enrollments of students in desks. We then look at who are residents, who are non-residents. We only count the residents for membership and revenue purposes. We then count the resident students that open and enroll out of the district somewhere else. Those count for membership purposes. We look at summer school attendance for residents, and we also have a factor that we count for those students also. So it's a little bit more complicated to get to a membership number. It's a full-time equivalency number. So once you take all those different factors into account, there's a conversion factor done on each one of those to give us a net number for revenue purposes. It has nothing to do with the number of kids in seats other than having a formula to get to those numbers that we need for revenue purposes. This is the slide I mentioned earlier on Mr. Meyer's comments on how summer school factors into the overall financial picture. This is a little snapshot for the revenue limit formula itself. And when you look at enrollments for revenue purposes, there's a current 3-year averaging and a lagging 3-year averaging. So as you look at the slide, the 5,877 students in that line 6 cell that's shaded green, that is our current 3-year average. The previous 3-year average is 5935. So what this shows in a quick look is that we have a slight decrease in overall membership or revenue for revenue purposes as you look at the lagging 3-year average to the current 3-year average. When we look at our current summer school, we had 238 as a net number of students. If I recall the number correctly, we had about 2,300 in a head count for summer school. There's a conversion factor that takes that to an equivalent number of hours for a regular school year, which nets us to 238 students, the way that would be counted for that purpose. And there's one more layer to that. The DPI and the state then has us take 40% of that 238 to get a net number for summer school for revenue authority purposes. So that nets to the 95. We then add that to our 5820 that we had for the current year, third Friday, September count. And that gets us to a net 5915 for our current year membership count for revenue purposes. That number is important, but it really isn't what drives revenue. What drives the revenue is that current or lagging 3-year average. So it factors in, but it's part of the bigger picture. And then effectively, we get to use the better of the two, whether the lagging 3-year or the current 3-year has the higher number, we effectively get to use the higher of those two in the way that other areas of the formula work. So there's a declining enrollment exemption that gives us dollars that helps us out to soften the blow of declining enrollment from one year to the next. If you look though at our trend on our current enrollments, we do see an upward trend slightly in that number. So that's a positive thing as we look to future revenue limits and how that all factors together. So any questions on that? Again, counterintuitive is okay because that's the way that layers of statutory changes kind of factor in the way it plays out here. Yes.
So I've been tracking this at the grade level since 2004, 2005. And the reason I do this is for questions such as, should we pass the referendum? What should our long range planning be? How many buildings do we need? Those kinds of questions. And I don't see that we're decreasing. I don't see the slight increase that you see, but you're looking at a little bit different numbers than I'm looking at. So apples to apples, that they're not really apples to apples, what I'm saying. What I do consider to be a tremendously important indicator is the senior kindergarten count, because we talk about cohort persistence, and over the years, that senior kindergarten number tends to stay in the district for 12 years, which is phenomenal to believe, but it's what's happened. And our senior kindergartner count this 3rd September is above our 19-year average. So that indicates health. It's only 1 year, but my question over the course of the past 2 years with COVID and things, and are we going to start going are we going to start decreasing? And the answer from that senior kindergarten count is no, we are stable. And that's that. And of course, we always have work to do to promote enrollment, and board president talk about wraparound services and things like that, which those kinds of things to keep enrollment here. But that senior kindergarten number is above the 19-year average for that number. So that's a very good indicator in my mind. Thank you.
And my slight increase was referring to the current three-year numbers that you see with 5870 in 2020, and then 5847 last year and 5915. So a slight upward trend, but
we're
basically
looking at
flat.
a different time horizon.
Yes.
With that indication. So
yep.
Go back 19 years, we're stable. Last 3 years, we're getting better.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, and then a quick high level look at total enrollment versus that 3-year average again on the revenue limit, and how that kind of is different way to approach both of those things. As I mentioned before, we'll be coming back with a much more in-depth enrollment analysis where we'll look at the the net impact of Bell Phillips and the WVA and other aspects of the District Children's Hospital, and how that all factors into the enrollment that we produce. As we look for enrollments for staffing, a little different number again. So we'll kind of dissect all of that and bring it in a form that we can give to the board and community for a better understanding with that. But again, for tonight, my intention was really just to focus on this third Friday count, how it factors into the current revenue authority for the current school year. Another way to look at the count from this year to last year is to look at an increase of 60 students, and now we're looking at resident enrollment comparisons only. And we did title this preliminary because we're still doing a vetting and audit of this. In fact, because we haven't had our auditors do what's called a membership audit since 17-18 school year, we asked them to come in early, and they started that count today. So they're upfronting an audit process we have to do anyways this year now, just to give us additional checks and balances within our internal system to make sure our counts are accurate with what we're providing to the state. In elementary, we're seeing an increase from last year to this year of about 100, which correlates with what Mr. Meyer was saying. Middle school, we're essentially flat, and at the secondary high school, a decrease of about 40 students overall. And a little bit more information on this slide that shows kind of the additions, subtractions that we had to our system to get to that net number. I think I'll come back to this one unless Dr. Means wants to comment on it when we do our larger enrollment analysis. And then a really busy spreadsheet, if you love the numbers, shows the breakdown of students. And it's hard to see on the screen, but it's available on board docs to be able to look at and blow up in certain sections. But in this slide, you can see by school, by grade level, by different area, by the different programs we have. So off to the right, you see that Bell Phillips is there, Children's Hospital is there to give the enrollment of the entire district in one single kind of snapshot with that. And then we do put last year's net numbers down at the bottom to show a difference from one year to the next. But again, we'll dive into that much deeper as we look at the future budget planning, starting with next year's budget. That, I believe, is what I have as far as a planned presentation on the third Friday update.
Thank you very much. Questions from the board? Students, any questions? Who went to the biggest elementary school?
I went to the small one.
The next item underneath strategic goal number 6, operations, is a presentation and action to approve the creation of a finance and resource standing board committee. Leanne? I believe you have the reading this week.
It is recommended that the school board approve the creation of a standing finance and resource committee, and I so move.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mito.
It's not
We're
on this
waiting
one.
on the technology. Currently, the board has 2 standing committees. Advocacy
Okay.
committee and also the policy committee. This recommendation this evening would be to create a third standing committee. It should be a finance and resource committee. The reason why it's titled finance and resource committee is because under the direction of Mr. Reitman, he's our CFO or CFOO, the Chief Financial and Operations Officer. So there are
other areas of this community would address, be it our technology infrastructure, our recreation department, and obviously buildings and grounds. When you consider all those different resources, that's considerable. And that's why this title of this proposed committee is finance and resources.
That's it.
Mr. Phillips worked with our CFO district right now.
Yeah.
To be ready.
Cool. Thanks, everybody, for entertaining this and for making this a priority. I'm going to try to get this full screen. Okay. So there we go. So if you look at the key work of school boards up on your screen, there are 5 core functions that high-performing school boards need to undertake in order to really maximize student achievement. And the mission of this committee is to focus on the 2 yellow circles you see right there highlighted around relationships, so vendor relationships, really strengthening relationships with the community, relationships with our technology, relationships with the rec department, and also to provide a framework of additional accountability for the district. And there's a link there if you want to link out into those 5 core areas. Also, there are 8 core duties that a high-performing school board needs to interact in. And this committee really addresses number 2, providing general oversight for the administration and the district as a whole by establishing standards and a framework for accountability. And then very much so in line with the 7th out of 8, which is adopt a budget and allocate resources consistent with established goals and priorities. We've spent a number of months putting together a strategic plan. And if we don't align our resources behind that strategic plan, we'll never realize the benefits of such. So the goal of this committee is to work together to bring that work to fruition by operationalizing it through the budget and other means. So, what we're proposing tonight, which of course y'all can take and leave, is a standing committee composed of 1 or more voting school board members. So it could be 1. It's up to the president, could appoint all 7, but at least 1 voting school board member, and the chief financial officer will also be a part of this committee as ex officio. This will be a standing committee, not ad hoc. So members of this committee will be appointed by the board president, and like the other committees will be a 1-term engagement. Then as as you'll see, there's like a framework or 3 major pillars that we'll be really engaging in, and other key staff will be asked to join. Like when we're talking about buildings and grounds, we'll have that, the specialists from the district there, as well as specialists from our community. Talking about recreation department, again, we want to make sure we have key staff involved in those meetings so they're fruitful and are really aligned operationally. And then for technology, same thing. So community involvement, well, we want community to be super involved in this as much as possible. The more transparent, the more proactive we can be, the better outcomes will happen through this engagement. And so all meetings will be made public. We'll, as we start building a roster of people, community members that have specialties in the 3 pillars of this committee, we'll be engaging them proactively to help us with this work. So the goal is to meet monthly to review various resources, including the budget, buildings, grounds, and technology, to really review reports and review some of those milestone efforts that we have coming up. So before anything comes to the board, this committee will be able to review it. And so when it comes to the board, we'll have our recommendations around those reports and be able to get a lot more done with a lot more informed point of view. And the committee will be transparent and proactive in reviewing and planning how district resources will be deployed in the strategic plan. So one more quick slide I want to go over, and then I'll open it up for comments and questions. So really 3 pillars with which the Finance and Resource Committee will operate. One is the numbers. So the budget and finance. That also involves our external relationships and our internal procedures, budget alignment to the strategic plan and budget planning. Some of the things that fall, kind of in a micro level under there will be, relooking at our RFP process to make sure we're bringing forward, number 6 of our strategic plan, looking at our vendor relationships, looking at other relationships that we have, whether collecting money or spending money, to make sure that those relationships are supporting the strategic plan. Building and grounds, make sure our community's connected and it's easy for our communities to utilize our buildings and grounds. Look at the recreation department. How is that supporting the mission and the strategic plan of the district? You know, some obviously a nod to accessibility and facility planning, whether long range or short range. So really trying to be proactive there. And then technology, another pillar of this committee. A big expenditure for the district, but something we want to take a closer look at and make sure we are being proactive. The community and the board is also informed as to what's coming up. What is our recommendation as a committee on things as they come up? So do the students and staff have the support that they need through technology to do their best work? How is the technology accessible to all of our learners and all of our staff people, like our online resources, like our website, things like that really engage community and support the strategic plan. Are they where they need to be? And then our technology resource planning, how do we be really proactive about what are the future needs of the district? How do we line all of our resources to make sure everyone is getting what they need in terms of technology? So I think that is it. And then it's just kind of an appendix. It's too small for me to really dive into, but at least you can see Mr. Brightman's done a nice job of starting to gather an inventory of things that this committee will start to review each month. And you can see F is for finance committee and B is for board. So the finance committee will be able to take a view of and digest some of the reports and have a recommendation when it comes before the board. So you're not walking into this blind and actually have some work done before it comes to the rest of you all. So I'll pause there, see if you have any questions or if anybody else does.
I support this idea. I'm going to offer a motion after a little comment here.
Okay.
And that has to do with, for example, the school board has a liaison to the city youth commission. I sit on the city senior commission.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with the school district board. The city senior commission is trying to be very attentive to recreational opportunities.
That's right.
in the city for seniors. And we haven't had a struggle, but it hasn't been obvious who to contact in the school district and the recreation department. So what I'm thinking here is to offer a motion that there be a chair for a liaison from the city senior commission to this committee for recreation department purposes, so that there's some obvious link between the two, so people don't have to go kind of inquiring around, well, who should I talk to? And I don't believe, depending upon the agenda of a particular finance committee meeting, the senior commission liaison may not need to be there. But if we could in some way formalize that communication bond between those two very civic-minded groups, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, I've taken myself out of the recreation activities with the senior commission.
Yeah.
So I don't have a personal, horse in this race, or however you want to say it. I just think it's a good idea. Just like, we have school board liaisons to city commission.
That's right.
And the city has agreed to that, or there wouldn't be a formal liaison.
Right.
What would the board think of that?
Yeah, my only concern is I wouldn't want to leave anybody out. So, and I also want to make sure that we're not taxing a volunteer from the senior commission to say, now you have to do this without someone put their hand up and say, yeah, I want to spend an hour at the district every month.
Or we wouldn't have to every month. I wouldn't want the idea to be discarded because the particular form I presented it in wasn't acceptable. But conceptually, we know that the senior commission representatives have met with Dr. Means a couple of times, and now there's question about, well, and I'm entertaining questions within the commission, well, you know, we need to talk to them again and see how some of these ideas are going. And I'm thinking, well, who's kind of busy right now? You know, it's been a very occupying few weeks here, but who do they talk to? And I'm thinking, well, I've said, well, maybe you should talk directly to, you know, to Matt and rec department, or talk directly to Mr. Brightman. But we're having to figure that out. And unless I was on the senior commission, they wouldn't really know.
Right.
And so there's this awkwardness to who to call, and then if you call them, you know, of course, everybody's always very kind and polite. But is it really their job, that person, to do that? So we can cut through all that ambiguity and allow people to get to the point about, you know, what can we do here? No, maybe you just say, well, we'll have our committee and we don't need to have a formal liaison chair. We just let them know this is the place to go, that you contact these, you know, the chair of the committee or something like that. And that would be fine as well. So I don't want, you know, I have this line, ideas beget ideas. I don't want the rise or fall of my idea to end the concept, and maybe somebody else will have another idea to accomplish the same end, to have an obvious communication channel between the two elected, you know, between the two governing entities.
I think we could go up a level, and because we do own a shared strategic plan with the city called the Active TOSA Plan, and that goes above just seniors, right? It talks about the entire community, and that was a very healthy pre-pandemic committee that we had, that had 2 alders, had Parks and Forestry people, as well as our buildings and grounds and our recreation department. So probably it's a great time as we build out the resources for this committee to bring back that joint, because not only would it provide the visibility that you're looking for, Mr. Meyer, it would provide a lot more and give us a bigger framework to work with instead of just focusing on one segment of our population inside of our city. It would allow us to really talk about the entire community as a whole and how the rec department and how our buildings can support the activity and the health of our entire community.
Well, I'm going to respectfully and kindly disagree with you here. Because these conversations have gotten down to the level of, well, who has signage where? And where are the defibrillators located? And what about bathroom access? I mean, these are down in the weeds conversations. And if you put it up to the level you're talking about, they're still going to have to send all these conversations down, you know, to a very mechanical, logistical level. And that's where kind of I am with this, if you see.
I do.
But yeah, so I'm seeing what you're saying. There's a broader governance aspect, but are those broader governance people going to want to talk about, you know,
probably not
this year for to repaint the lines on the pickleball courts so the seniors don't have the last choice in line color, and it turns out to be blue, which they can't see very well.
Oh, with the Parks and Forestry Department.
Oh yeah, all this kind of stuff.
Okay.
So, but maybe you say we don't need to have a liaison role. We just let them. It's understood here in this meeting when we approve this that this will be the place to go. So contact Mr. Brightman or
well, it depends. I mean, if it's pickleball stripes, it won't be the place to go. But if it's other things that have to do with district facilities, then I probably, maybe not at this area, but we'll be able to direct them. But I do think like there's an opportunity for us to reach out to the city and see how they vision themselves being a part of this committee, because a lot, you know, like Hart Park, and a lot of those things fall into this work. So I think it's a great suggestion, and I'll reach out to the city and let them know like we're forming this, and how do they feel like they could best bring value to the partnership, you know?
Okay, so with you as chair, as treasurer, reach out to Dane Maddox, who's the commission chair.
Well, there's a whole group of there's 6 people that were involved in the Active TOSA committee, and I'll reach out to all of them and just say like what, you know, 2 aldermen, Parks and Forest, the finance committee people there, and see what how they vision this, you know, working together.
Well,
I'd hate to dictate, you know.
I'm still going to blow the horn for the senior commission. That's kind of what they're doing right now. So like, one of the key pillars of their activities are the recreational opportunities. And so as long as I would think at the chair level, you and the senior commission have a conversation about what's the best way to do this here.
Absolutely.
Do we need something formalized, or now that we have this the school district board committee, you
Yep.
just know that's the place to go.
Right.
So you call this person, and you don't have to worry that you're taking your time when, you know, they have other things to do. That's kind of part of their role, is to entertain these inquiries.
I understand.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Got it. Cool. Any other? Yes, ma'am.
So it says, in the proposed committee structure, the
Mhm.
standing committee composed of one or more voting school board members. Mr. Meyer just said something that
Mhm.
assumptions that I want to codify. You said treasurer.
Well, yeah, we're kind of vague here.
Right,
We're voting,
so
to tell you the truth.
I would
Yeah.
like to propose that one of the folks is the treasurer, that is actually a responsibility of the treasurer.
Okay.
And that I would like to see more than one person on this committee.
Okay.
I'm fine with two. And I think the balance of treasurer and somebody else to ask all the non-money like questions. The silly questions that folks really need to hear the layperson's answer to because the finances are so complicated. Is what I would like to make sure we see. I think it's, I would never want to have a standing committee that's only one person.
Yeah.
I think we've seen two people on the policy committee, the legislative advocacy committee. It also helps just in terms of people's busy lives, et cetera.
Yep.
But I would propose that one of those school board members has to be the treasurer.
Okay.
So just mechanics here. How do we get this done? That was my other point.
Mhm.
I'm really not, I know at a high level what I'm voting for, but those details will matter about whether this is effective
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
practical.
And we can vote on this next meeting. I can clean this up and bring it back.
Well,
Because since not everybody's here.
we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
And conceptually, we know, I'm just trying to help us get progress, right? Could we approve this tonight with the expectation that you will come back to us with specific bylaws about how we're gonna do this, that you know you're blessed to put more work into it?
I'd rather not. I'd rather for it to come back and be complete based on your feedback.
And your connection, you making calls to the senior commission?
Once we have a committee to call them about, then yes, then we'll make the
But
engagement.
the idea of down to the specifics, do we want a liaison from some? Maybe
From the
not
city,
just-
absolutely.
Maybe, you know, do we want a formal city liaison?
If that's something that they want, or we can wait to hear back from them if y'all want to, and I can bring that back when they reply and say how they want this to go.
I mean, actually, I've been kind of uncomfortable sitting on the senior commission and the school board because it's not a school board liaison to the committee. I'm on that senior commission as
A citizen.
and that's not always clear to people.
Yeah.
And so I have to qualify what I'm saying. I really am not speaking here. I'm speaking for me.
Sure.
I'm not speaking as an emissary of the school board.
Mhm.
And I think that's helpful for people to know
Absolutely.
what their role is. And I'm not, you haven't sent me to speak for you.
Right. Right.
And so I'd like that clarified on their end as well.
Yeah.
Maybe they need a school recreation department. Well, there are recreation department employees who are on the senior commission. That has been.
Oh, that's cool.
But not a school board member. So I don't have an answer. I don't have a conclusion on how it should be. I know right now things get done, but it can be a little awkward. We don't want to overstep. Nobody wants to overstep what they're doing.
Sure.
Right. And take people's time when it really wasn't a good idea, you know.
I do.
Mr. Phillips, I would be comfortable with your option.
Okay.
Food tonight, or you're more comfortable coming back. I think the idea of having a second member makes good sense to me. I'm comfortable with the treasurer being committee, and that's something we've built out more since my time on board.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. Intuitively it does, but there may be reasons, good and bad, I haven't thought of. And I'm certainly I think I would lean into the point you made about how can we pull in talent and expertise from the community in different ways. Onto the committee. And they may not have a formal role, they may have certain projects that they're working on. And there may be other formal roles that get spun out of this group that we kind of bring back to board saying, we're going to dig deep into this. We'd like to committee appointments for an ad hoc group off this committee. So I think these are all possibilities. But
Agreed.
I'm excited about this. I appreciate you pouring this forward.
Sure.
And I think it's meeting a major need that we have as a government.
Absolutely.
Can I have a motion to table this, vote to next week? 2 weeks.
I'd like to put forth a motion to table the approval of the creation of a Finance and Resource Standing Board Committee to the October 24th board meeting.
Second. Dr. Means, to call roll?
Ms. Manville,
Yes.
Freeland,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Joseph Anger,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
So we will have a couple updates based on our feedback.
Yep.
And then we'll have this as an action item for 2 weeks. Just people, I keep forgetting you're there. My apologies.
Thank you.
This is doing a lot of good.
Yeah, I
I'm
hope so.
really excited about the conversation we just had about relationships with the city to support seniors and the rec department and the technology. We've even been talking about some kind of mapping system for handheld devices for seniors to be able to find benches and restrooms as they're on the walking trails. And I've asked questions of Mr. Price, Jamie Price, who's been very helpful on suggestions, and talked with the park department of the city, and they have ideas, and it's all kind of like evolving, and it's just so many good things that can be done. So I just want to thank you for bringing this forward.
Thanks for the good feedback.
And Mike, thank you as well for grounding it in the National Association of School Board. Key work. I think it's important for folks to know that we're doing that work behind the scenes as well.
Thanks. Thank you.
Any community comment on any of these 3 items? The year-end financial report from 21-22, the third Friday enrollment count report, or the creation of a Finance and Resource Standing Board Committee? Any comments online, Gene?
Yes, we do have 2 hands raised. BJ Erments, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Thank you very much. My name is BJ Ermans. I live at 2749 North 75th Street, and I am a member of the Commission for Persons with Disabilities. I very much appreciate the detailed description of the Finance and Resource Committee. I would like to ask that our commission be considered as providing a member. We are currently working with Dr. Clems or Director Clems for working with the special ed group, and there are a number of items in the financial plan that do refer to special education. So I think a case can be made for including us. I would also like to let the IT people know that the sound, for some reason, is about half the volume of what it normally is for those of us zooming in. I had to double my speaker volume, and even then it is very faint, except for the guest speakers. Those microphones are working very well. So I just wanted to let you know about that. And I believe those were the only things that I am allowed to speak on at this point in time. So I will wait for the next break. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Then we have one other public comment.
Sorry, I was muted. My fault. The next one is Deb Falk-Palak. You have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Thank you. Hi, Deb Falk-Palak. Mr. Phillips, thanks for putting this together. I actually see this committee as somewhere where people can come and say, we're missing a step on a transform platform at a playground or something like that. I appreciate too making these public, and I'm wondering if these standing committees of the school board, if there can be minutes posted to these. I was looking for legislative advocacy and the policy committee. So I don't know if those are recorded, but at a minimum, could there be minutes put into board docs so that the public can see the work of these standing board committees. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have one more. Julie Alexander, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Julie Alexander, and I live at 7224 West State Street, Unit 1A in Wauwatosa. I want to mention that I really appreciated the last presentation here, and I echo BJ's Ermic's comments, and I'm the chair of the Wauwatosa Commission for Citizens with Disabilities, so you could contact me or let me know, and we could discuss it in terms of finding a member that would be able to serve. Thank you so much.
There are no more hands raised.
Thank you. We will next go into two separate board governance issues. The first will be a policy committee update. I will be briefly giving that. Both of our policy committee members, one is unexpectedly ill this evening and one is traveling. So on the October 10th policy committee update is that generally the district uses a 3-year cycle to evaluate and update policies, and that's kind of districts around the country. We are working with a group that is examining and reviewing all of our policies to update them and support our work in this. Dr. Hoig and Ms. Willis have decided to use a 1-year cycle to evaluate policies this school year. Primarily the areas that they're starting on in round 1 is policy 5540, policy 5850, 5855, 5610, and 5611. These are all student-focused policies, and they viewed them as essential in evaluating first the continued district work on these. Next is going to be the zeros or the bylaws. Those will be the next thing that they dig into in updating board bylaws and our governance framework. The next ones that they'll be doing is our underneath programs. And then the last one is section 4 in conjunction with what I expect to be a policy and operations committee would be policy 62320 and 5113. So their kind of pace and cadence to this will be, they will be meeting every other week, bi-weekly, first and third Mondays at 4 p.m. Going forward. And that they will be submitting proposed policies for review and discussion with the whole board at a monthly meeting. So they will be bringing forward each different item to us. And they're currently working at looking at exemplar districts in the Midwest to help identify good model policies within each of those sections. So they're looking outward, both using what is available through Neola, the group that we're working with on policy, as well as looking at exemplars and models that are in place at different districts. That then comes back. They will make recommendations to the board. We will consider it, discuss, and move forward with adoption or kind of changes as we go. So those are the general updates. I have not been most recently sitting in on that meeting. So I apologize, I'm not able to answer kind of any more detailed stuff, but I would hold questions for Jessica and Jenny for their next update, which will be a new monthly addition to our board meetings. Ms. Fraley is going to provide the update for the Legislative Advocacy Committee, for which she and I serve on together.
Thank you. So specific to the Legislative Advocacy Committee, over the last several meetings, we've been working on putting together our legislative priorities for the upcoming year. Next June will be the vote on the next biennium budget, which lasts for 2 years for us. And so focusing on funding and school safety and thinking about funding for high need students, et cetera, are some of the things that we're talking about. Mr. Brightman has been incredibly helpful in helping us sort of map out a long-term picture with Dr. Means and thinking about strategy about, first and foremost, how do we make an extremely complicated process more understandable to our voting constituency, to our community. I work in education nationally, and I can say with confidence, Wisconsin has one of the most complex funding formulas in the nation. Mr. Brightman spoke a little bit earlier about how one of our challenges is even the timing of the budget, which comes after we learn after we've submitted our budget what funding we're actually going to get. And so I always say to my children, it would be like telling you to go get an apartment without telling you what your salary is. And it's been especially challenging over the last couple of years because obviously the school district is experiencing inflation just like we all are. And you've heard us talk about how we want to make sure that our pay is competitive for our teachers. We want to make sure that we're offering coursework for our students that is, not 15 years old. That is like what it is that you all are looking forward to be doing and whatnot. So right now we are looking to, within the next month or so, finalize our legislative priorities. And again, these are nonpartisan priorities. And so we are interested in also knowing what it is those folks who are running for office want for education. What are their priorities? So we have sent some letters out to candidates to ask them to share with us, beyond what they may have on their website, what their educational priorities are for their platform and whatnot, so that we know that whomever ends up in office come November, we are able to work with them effectively to ensure that kids in Wauwatosa have what they need to be successful. And that, as you can see from the budget tonight, that we are looking at all of our spending very thoughtfully to ensure that we are aligning our budget dollars with our strategic plan, that we're figuring out how to get the best return on investment and whatnot. So within the next month, I hope that we would be able to report back to you. Here are the legislative priorities. Folks who are interested in attending, please come. We need your creative juices. We're also thinking about an education campaign that is like really accessible, quick, short videos, visuals, helping folks to understand, like I said, a very complex process. So that is where we are right now. We want to focus on the positive. There's a lot of negative out there right now if you're watching television or listening to the radio. But the one thing Wisconsin has going for it is 80% of voters say that education is a huge priority for them. Every parent wants what's best for their kids. So we're hoping that we can really line up a strategic plan with building relationships with legislators so that they understand how to fund education in a way that actually has an impact on kids. Anything you would add, Dr. Means, Dr. Jess Banger, Mr. Brightman? Okay. So more to come. Please join us for a meeting. And Ms. Falk-Palak, I will work on getting some minutes in so that we can see if we can get them up for you. There are minutes.
That is our meeting. We have an opportunity for final public comment on items on the agenda or items not on the agenda for anyone who'd like to speak this evening. This is your chance. Yep. When you come on up, you can come on up to the microphone and we just need your name and your address. And then you've got 3 minutes.
17 North 68th Street. I'm here tonight because I have questions. And since you seem like you're the head honcho, I'd like to address my questions to you, Mr. Eric Jessup.
Yep. One thing to know, sir, is that this isn't a Q&A, but you can certainly ask them, but I will not be able to answer your questions this evening. But we'll be listening.
Can answer them. Somebody stand up to the mic and answer them. Your questions that I have.
Your questions can be answered by the superintendent, right?
Okay, Mr. Superintendent.
If you,
here we go.
Right, we typically do that. If there's a substantive question, information can be provided later on this week or this month, or right. Okay, I'm sorry.
All right, somebody answer, please. I have questions tonight because from what I heard was that we have this sex education curriculum that's being taught And from what I heard from a source, a radio source, that a Wauwatosa school teacher has shown a 4-year-old kindergarten a female's private part. Am I correct? I could be wrong.
I'm not aware that that has occurred.
Okay. Well, we're introducing this sex education curriculum to kindergartners. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
Don't people have decency? A kindergartner? I have a 3-year-old granddaughter that attends the Tulsa schools. And you're going to try to teach her this? What's wrong with you people? Who would even approve of something like this? I'm lost for words here. I don't even know how to address this, but I guess the vote was 5-1. And I'm new at the meeting, as you guys can tell, but I'm assuming this is the board here that voted. I could be wrong. Don't you folks have any decency to vote something like this in to teach kindergartner sex education? I mean, I own my children, not the state, not the board. I know you guys sent out like a memo saying that if you can opt out if you want. Well, what if you're like me? Because I raised my kids as a single parent, and I don't have time to read memos or whatever. When I was a parent, now I'm a grandparent. So, I mean, I'm lost for words. But am I right that you guys are teaching kindergarten sex education? Somebody answer me. I don't want to sit up here looking like a fool.
So there's a lot of information available on the website.
You're going to point me to a website?
I am. So there's a lot of information. It's all transparent. You could look through it every lesson and review all the information. That's been up there for several months, and it will continue to be up there. It goes through age level by age level.
What's the age level? Can someone answer that? What's the first? Is it kindergarten? Third?
There's things that they're taught that are, in my perspective, appropriate for the level and age. Variable views on that, I understand. But you could review it and take a look at it of like what each of the different items are for kindergarten. Okay. And if you have questions that you would like to come through, someone from the district staff could certainly talk about what your grandchildren would be kind of getting and reviewing. All the staff is about to go through, I think, ongoing professional development about that.
I like the way you guys talk with these eloquent words. But when you guys go home tonight, whoever voted this in, this is my final word. When you guys go home, look yourself in the mirror and say, I voted for this, if you voted for it. And look yourself in the mirror and say, I have no decency. You're going to teach. I'm afraid that my 3-year-old granddaughter is going to be learned about sex education. She might be shown an inappropriate picture. If I stand up here right now and drop my shorts, you guys will call the police on me. I'd be going to jail. Are you going to show this to my granddaughter?
Sir, you are at time. What I would encourage you to do is take a look at what's actually.
I don't even want to talk to you because you're going to give me some website. Refer to this website. I came here tonight for questions.
I understand.
For answers for my questions.
I understand that.
I'm not getting any. But you guys act like you're scared.
Not scared. What I think is that you may have had an inaccurate portrayal of the curriculum via the media.
I know I know some of the stuff. I'm just playing like I don't know much, but I know what's been taught.
Understood. So at this point, your time is up. Thank you.
You guys have no decency if you voted this in.
Sir, thank you. Any other public comment on any agenda or non-agenda items this evening? Jamie, anything online?
Yeah, we have a couple of hands raised. BJ Ermantz, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Thank you very much. BJ Ermantz, 2749 North 75th Street. And thank you, IT. You fixed the microphone problem for the board members. That was terrific. I would also like to request that there be community input after some of the important presentations, such as after the summer school report. And because I have comments or questions about that, and I realize they cannot be answered here. I just wanted to raise them so people are aware of them. A couple of things that came to mind is that the city, working with the city on some type of work project during the summer. I know the Parks Department needs people, and some of our commissions could use some help. For example, if the students are going to do a project on videos, it would be learning how to do a video. The Commission for Persons with Disabilities would love someone to work with us and create an informational video. And I would bet some of the other commissions may as well. I also did not hear mention of the transition program accomplishments or things during summer school. I know there were some things that happened with that. So the only thing I can figure is that right now, special education is under the is not under the academics division, so that might be why it was not mentioned. And I'd have to wait for a special education or pupil and family services report to see that. But that does beg the question as far as to the other special education was listed in there, although not broken out. We'll be inviting Principal Oliver separately. But just to mention that I do know there was activity and things going well for the students in the program. So thank you to the staff that took care of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Deb Falk-Palak. Deb, you have the microphone. Please state your name and address.
Thank you. Hi, it's Deb Falk-Palak. I have some comments about the summer school report. And when the slide was up about strengths, one thing that I think is very important and was a strength that should be listed, and Dr. Means may remember this because during one of the public listening sessions, there was a parent who brought up that we're missing an opportunity. We're missing opportunities for children between 11th grade and up to 21 who stay in the district. And Dr. Means, seemed surprised to hear that we weren't doing something for that group of people, and he made it happen last summer. So I think it was a great program, a phenomenal program. We do have good programming for our older age students, but it was missing in this summer school report. And I think it's a strength that should be put in there, but I wonder why it was missing. It goes back to, always asking ourselves, are we forgetting anybody when we're looking at developing programs, when we're looking at reviewing programs, curriculum, what have you? It was mentioned that there'll be a survey sent out, and I do wonder if there will be a survey sent out to all of our families up to 21 to talk about course offerings. Has there been a review of ESY during summer school to look at what was offered, how many children were served, what kind of offerings we had? The young gentleman the student representative, I liked your question when you asked about the Montessori school, and I asked too about how this is promoted, how summer schools opportunities are promoted within the special ed community. We learned from Ms. Clem last week that we have 1,007 students this year with IEPs. And then lastly, the rec department, I spoke with the director there. I think his name is Matthew, and I want to say he came from Illinois, and I had a conversation with him about 1.5 years ago. And he did mention that we have gaps in our community for older age adolescents. So I would encourage the talking more about that. And certainly the summer school report, I'd really like to see something more of a deeper dive into what happened within the special ed area and not forget that group of individuals and students. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more hands raised.
Thank you very much. With that, it is 8:57 p.m. May I have a motion to adjourn into executive closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.851C for the purpose of the superintendent evaluation?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Means, please call the roll.
Ms. Muehlfeld,
Yes.
Ms. Freely,
Yes.
Mr. Meyer,
Yes.
Dr. Jessup Banger,
Yes.
Mr. Phillips.
Yes.
We are adjourned into executive closed session at 8:58. We'll take about a 10-minute recess and come back.